Last July, my house faced a major issue. There was a severe plumbing problem that flooded the basement, leaving me without a place to stay for several days. I work remotely, so being without a functional home office was a huge problem. I had to act quickly and find a temporary place to stay. Unfortunately, my city doesn't have a lot of options, so I ended up booking a short-term rental through a different platform I hadn't used before. The nearest available spot that was reasonably priced was about 36 minutes away, in a small and quiet town that often had eerie rumors circulating about it. When I arrived, it was late, and I was exhausted from everything that had happened with my house. I barely had time to take in the surroundings before heading straight to bed. The house itself felt cold and unusually still. I tried to brush off the strange vibes. It was probably just my nerves from the stressful day. I fell asleep almost immediately. The next morning, I woke up early and began setting up my laptop, preparing for a long workday. Right as I was about to dive into my tasks, there was a sudden knock on the door. I hesitated, unsure whether I should answer. After all, it wasn't my house. Through the window, I saw a man standing on the porch. He looked to be in his 30s, with numerous tattoos covering his arms and neck. But these weren't normal tattoos. They looked like strange occult symbols, dark and foreboding. His cold stare sent a shiver down my spine. I decided against answering the door. Something about the man made me uneasy, and I didn't want to risk it. As the day went on, I tried to shake off the strange feeling. I focused on work, hoping that nothing more would happen. I spent the entire day glued to my laptop, trying to catch up on everything I'd missed while my house was out of commission. It wasn't until late in the evening, after returning from picking up some dinner, that I heard another knock. This time, I felt a deep sense of dread. I went to the window, and sure enough, it was the same man standing outside. His expression hadn't changed. He still had that cold, unsettling look. The air around him seemed to have grown heavier, and his tattoos appeared darker under the dim evening light. I stood frozen by the door, unsure of what to do. He knocked again, more forcefully this time. Fear took over, and I backed away from the door, deciding once again not to engage. Later that night, as I worked late into the night, I started hearing a strange humming sound coming from the walls. It was subtle at first, but soon it grew louder, almost like a low, guttural chant, similar to the one I'd heard in my dream. I stood up from my desk, looking around, when I noticed something terrifying. Wet, muddy footprints trailing from the front door through the hallway. My heart raced as I realized the back door was slightly ajar. How was this possible? I hadn't opened it. I grabbed my phone, my hands shaking, and started dialing. But I froze when I heard footsteps coming down the stairs, slow, deliberate, and heavy. My breath caught in my throat as I stood still, listening. Then, from the shadows, he emerged, the same man with the tattoos. But now, something was different. His tattoos seemed to pulse with dark energy, and his eyes glowed faintly in the dim light. He was no ordinary intruder. There was a darkness about him, something far more sinister. I could feel it in the air, a dark, astral energy radiating from him, like he was connected to forces far beyond our world. He stepped towards me, his gaze locking onto mine with a mix of hatred and hunger. It was then that I realized this man wasn't just some random criminal. He was a Satanist, someone deeply entrenched in dark rituals, and I was his next target. His tattoos were symbols of sacrifice, and he had been stalking me, waiting for the right moment to complete his ritual. I didn't think. I just ran. I bolted through the back door, sprinting into the dense woods behind the house. The branches scratched at my skin as I ran, but I didn't care. I just needed to get away. I hid behind a large tree, trying to catch my breath, but I wasn't safe yet. I could hear his footsteps, slow and methodical, crunching through the leaves as he searched for me. My heart pounded in my ears, and I held my breath, praying he wouldn't find me. Luckily, he passed by without noticing me. Once the footsteps faded into the distance, I finally called the police. When they arrived, I explained everything, and they eventually caught him. He had broken into several homes, performing unspeakable acts on his victims, all part of his dark rituals. His tattoos were unmistakable, and I'll never forget the look in his eyes. That night, I was lucky, but the thought of what could have happened still haunts me.